House of the Dragon, the grand story of the Civil War of the Targaryens. The Dance of the Dragons is currently closing in on its finale of its amazing Season 2. Throughout House of the Dragon, we've seen a variety of changes that the showrunners have made to the story of the Dance of the Dragons, taken from the book Fire and Blood. Some of these changes being minor, other changes adding a more creative flourish to the story, oftentimes fleshing out characters in more detail, or events that occurred during the Dance of the Dragons. All things being said, House of the Dragons, in my opinion, has been surprisingly loyal to its source material, the book Fire and Blood, except that's all about to change quite drastically. Hello everyone, I'm Finn. Welcome back to Finn Films. Join me today as we discuss several of the major changes House of the Dragon has made to the story of the Dance of the Dragons in Fire and Blood, such as the exclusion of the Fool Mushroom, the adding of Daemon's dream sequences, and what might be the biggest change of them all, specifically the rider of the Wild Dragon, Sheepstealer. As a Game of Thrones fan and a bit of like a kind of Westerosi lore nerd, House of the Dragons has genuinely surprised me with just how loyal the story has been to the source material, and really just in general how goddamn good this show is. I genuinely believe that House of the Dragons is like peak Game of Thrones. It is Game of Thrones at its peak, and that when this show is all said and done, and whenever they wrap it in Season 3 or 4, that House of the Dragons will easily clear Game of Thrones, at least in respect to the shows. Just to note, this video will contain some spoilers for Fire and Blood in House of the Dragons, so consider yourself warned. One of the things that I love about the Dance of the Dragons is that the source material, the book Fire and Blood, is a book that actually exists within the world of Westeros itself. It is a canon piece of lore within the story itself, in addition to being a physical book that we can buy and read. One of my favorite things about Fire and Blood is that it is written from the perspective of Archmaester Gildan, using a number of sources that tell the history of the Targaryens in Westeros, and that these sources in particular are considered to be biased and not entirely accurate, specifically 3 sources. 1, The Dance of the Dragons, a true telling by Grandmaster Munkin. 2, The Reign of King Viserys by Septon Eustace. And 3, The Testimony of Mushroom, a telling of the Dance of the Dragons from the POV of a court fool who served at the courts of Viserys, Aegon, and Rhaenyra. Because of the ambiguous nature of the source material of Fire and Blood, the House of the Dragon show has been able to make a number of changes to the story of the Dance of the Dragons, oftentimes these changes being more on kind of the creative side, changes that are meant to either flesh out characters or kind of add more details to the events of the Dance of the Dragons. And because of this, the majority of the changes that we've seen so far in the show, I think have gone really well and have been good changes and have gone over well with the fans. The first change that I want to talk about in this video is the omission of the court fool Mushroom. As I said, Mushroom was a court jester and a fool who worked in the courts of the Targaryens. Mushroom account of the Dance of the Dragons being used as a source in the canon history book Fire and Blood. This makes Mushroom then a semi-kind of important character to our story in Fire and Blood, as it is his account of the Dance of the Dragons that is used in Archmaester Gildan's writing of the book Fire and Blood, a history of the Targaryens in Westeros. Mushroom was said to have served in the court of King's Landing during the reign of King Viserys Targaryen, Mushroom being an eyewitness to many of the events that occurred during the lead-up of the Dance of the Dragons. Specifically, the controversy of Rhaenyra Targaryen's first 3 children, Mushroom claiming to have seen Rhaenyra in bed with Harwin Strong, and that he played a major part in revealing the nature of Rhaenyra's children and this information to King Viserys. As we know, House of the Dragons confirms that Rhaenyra's 3 sons, Jace, Luke, and Joffrey, were all fathered by Harwin Strong, making them bastards, their issue of lineage being a kind of pivotal breaking point between Rhaenyra and Alicent, as well as calling into question the legitimacy of her children, and in turn, Rhaenyra's role as heir to the throne, in addition to her children's role as heirs to their respective lineage. However, in Fire and Blood, it is only speculated that Jace, Luke, and Joffrey are actually Harwin Strong's children. It is not confirmed within the story, it's merely a rumor. A rumor that is largely contributed and put forth in Mushroom's telling of his accounts of the story and the history of the Dance of the Dragons. In the years that would follow, Rhaenyra would spend most of her time on Dragonstone, as her and Alicent's relationship had grown rather fractious. Mushroom accompanying Rhaenyra to Dragonstone and spending much of his time around her and in her court. Mushroom claims to have witnessed and even participated in a number of notable events during the Dance of the Dragons, such as witnessing the duel between the twins, Sir Eric and Sir Eric, on Dragonstone, claiming that the sowing of the seeds was his idea, the sowing of the seeds being the plan to find new dragon riders using Targaryen bastards, Mushroom even claiming that he himself tried to claim the great dragon, Silverwing. It's important to note that Mushroom's accounts of what happened during the Dance of the Dragons do conflict with some of the other source materials, more specifically the accounts of Septim Eustace, as Mushroom's versions of the story were staunchly pro-Rhaenyra compared to Eustace. Many hardcore Thrones fans were disappointed that Mushroom has been left out of House of the Dragons, as his testimony is one of the core sources for the events of the Dance of the Dragons in Fire and Blood, but overall, his presence in the show, or really lack thereof, isn't really that important for the actual events that take place during this Civil War. As well, it is still possible that Mushroom could make maybe like a cameo appearance in either Season 3 or Season 4, though I would actually be pretty surprised if that were to happen. The next change I want to talk about is actually what I think might be one of the best changes that the show has made so far to Fire and Blood, and that is Daemon's visions and dreams that he suffers in Harrenhal. I've done a whole video that goes into the number of theories of the causes of Daemon's dreams. Alice Rivers, excuse me. So I highly recommend that you guys go and check that video out if that's something that you're interested in. So as we know, the crowning of Aegon in King's Landing would ultimately kind of be the first catalyst event for the Civil War of the Targaryens. Daemon, wanting to rally the lords of Westeros in support of Rhaenyra, sets off to the Riverlands on Caraxes, claiming Harrenhal by himself like an absolute Giga Chad. This is basically what also happens in Fire and Blood. The show just changes a few order of things that occur for dramatic effect and for like storytelling purposes, specifically the show moving the plot of Blood and Cheese to before Daemon claims Harrenhal, while in the book Fire and Blood, Daemon approves the plot of Blood and Cheese after he claims Harrenhal. In the show, we see Harrenhal, specifically the Curse of Harrenhal, or possibly Alice Rivers, begin having strange effects on the rogue prince Daemon, Daemon being plagued by a number of visions and dreams, most of them kind of referring to Daemon's coveting of his brother and now his wife's throne. As far as I know and can remember from Fire and Blood, there are no dream sequences or visions that are ever discussed that Daemon suffers while he's in Harrenhal. However, I actually think that this is a really good change to the source material. Basically, Daemon's entire story in Season 2 consists of him trying to gather the River Lords on his side in Harrenhal, all the while Daemon is being tormented by these dreams and visions, some of them of his dead wife, many of the other visions involving his lust for the Iron Throne being depicted through a young Rhaenyra, and as well as his brother, the now dead King Viserys. I think these dream sequences do an awesome job in kind of fleshing out Daemon's character, his many flaws as a person, as Fire and Blood doesn't make it clear that Daemon very much coveted the throne and was very desperate for Viserys to ultimately name him his heir. As well, I think that this does a good job in kind of capturing this image of Daemon as a character as he is remembered in Westerosi lore, as Daemon is both remembered as being a monster and a man. According to Archmaester Gildan, in his day there was not a man so admired, so beloved, and so reviled in all of Westeros. He was made of light and darkness in equal parts. To some he was a hero, to the others the blackest of villains. This is really kind of the crux of Daemon's character, in my opinion. He is easily the most complicated character in our story, both equal parts hero and villain, and I think that these dream sequences do a really good job in really helping to convey this part of his character. Daemon is like extremely selfish and rash, but he is also extremely loyal at the same time. I mean, he is known as the Rogue Prince for a reason. I mean, throughout Season 1 of House of the Dragons, Daemon basically does like whatever the he wants to do. He steals a dragon egg and flees to Dragonstone. He helps Corlys Velaryon wage war on the Triarchy without permission from the king, his brother, and he even kills his own wife. The first one, I mean. Daemon is easily my favorite character in the story of the Dance of the Dragons, and I love the way that House of the Dragons is depicting him and telling his story, and I think the addition of these dream sequences is a really great way to kind of further flesh out this character on screen, while referencing a number of kind of like other subjects in Westerosi lore, specifically the Curse of Harrenhal, as well as the role of the infamous character, Alice Rivers. Finally, we move on to what I think is easily the biggest change in House of the Dragon so far, the rider of the wild dragon, Sheepstealer. I've referenced this several times in my last few House of the Dragons videos, but it very much seems like House of the Dragons is setting up Rhaena Targaryen, the daughter of Daemon Targaryen, to be the rider of the wild dragon, Sheepstealer. Now, this is a very major change in the story of the Dance of the Dragons in Fire and Blood. Sheepstealer's rider in Fire and Blood being the young bastard Nettles, a dragon seed who claims the wild dragon Sheepstealer through giving it freshly slaughtered sheep, and Nettles ultimately winning the dragon's trust, and who Mushroom even claims was a lover to Daemon Targaryen. Nettles, though, is completely absent from House of the Dragons, and it very much seems like she won't be appearing at all, as she has yet to be cast, and even according to the wiki, they've combined Nettles' story with Rhaena Targaryen. It very much seems like Nettles' storyline is basically being completely transferred to Rhaena Targaryen, as in episodes 6 and 7 of Season 2 of House of the Dragon, Rhaena discovers that there is a wild dragon in the Vale, this dragon very obviously being Sheepstealer. Now, at the time of recording, Season 2, Episode 8 of House of the Dragons has not aired yet, but to me it seems very likely that Sheepstealer will make an appearance in this episode, and Rhaena might even actually claim the dragon before this episode is all said and done, as this is the Season 2 finale. Nettles, like the other dragon seeds, does play a pretty important role in our story, ultimately her along with the other dragon seeds kind of tipping the tide of the war into Rhaenyra's favor, as they all of a sudden gain 3 new dragon riders with Ulf, Q, and Nettles. As I said, though, this storyline seems to be completely cut from House of the Dragons, and it looks like they are merging Nettles' story with Rhaena Targaryen's story, giving Rhaena a much more kind of prominent role in the Dance of the Dragons, more so than she had that we see in Fire and Blood. And honestly, I'm perfectly okay with this. Rhaena has already been established as a side character at this point in House of the Dragons, a character who has very much been overshadowed by her twin sister Baela for much of the story so far, so I think it kind of fits well thematically that Rhaena should have kind of her own coming-of-age story in the claiming of the wild dragon's Sheepstealer, and then taking a much greater role in the Dance of the Dragons and the war that is to come. Now, of course, though, this change will have some greater ripple effects to our story as a whole, like in terms of what role she's going to play in the war, and ultimately what her fate and the fate of Sheepstealer might have for the rest of the story, and we just have no idea what that is going to be now that House of the Dragons has largely gone off script. They've gone off the story of Nettles, so we really have no idea what is going to happen to Rhaena once she claims Sheepstealer for the later seasons. Again, I don't think that this is a bad change at all. Rhaena has very much been in the shadow of her sister Baela throughout Season 2, and this change kind of further plays into the story that is happening with Rhaena's character, and gives her a much more prominent role in the story of the Dance of the Dragons, but easily, by far and away, this is the most kind of drastic, the biggest change that House of the Dragons has made to Fire and Blood so far, and I really do look forward to seeing what ripple effects that this change will have in the events of Season 3. If you did enjoy this video, learn something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to help support me and put this video into the algorithm. As well, let me know in the comment section down below other changes that you noticed or liked that House of the Dragons has made to Fire and Blood so far. If you did enjoy this video, then why don't you check out some of my other House of the Dragons content on screen now. As always, guys, thank you again so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Until next time, stay safe out there. Peace, love, adu.